Welcome to the Mediacasters with your business besties, Karina Belizzi and Julie Loken. In every episode, you'll get behind-the-scenes access to experts who share their struggles and successes in podcasting, publishing, and presenting. So grab a pen, grab your bestie, and kick it with Karina and Jules.
Are you ready to kick it?
I'm ready to kick it, business bestie. Today,
Well, cheers from my Mediacaster's cup. Hello.
I love that. Well, welcome to the Mediacasters. What a treat we have today. I mean, I have gotten to know this gentleman over the past few months, and he just proves himself to be just that, a gentleman. He proves himself to be an expert in publishing. He's so motivational. He lays the stage for people to really ask questions and to understand. And he has an eye. He truly has an eye for the it factor. And we're going to learn about what the it factor is with Dominick Domasky. Are you so excited, Karina?
I'm so excited. We're just going to bring him right up and get started. So
Let's do this.
Welcome, Dominick. Let's kick it.
You there. I want to be a bestie too. Let's do this.
Well, you are pretty much now.
Yes.
There's no turning back. So, Dominick, you are doing such amazing things. And the thing that I really was drawn to when I met you is that you really get outside of your ego. There is not a lot of ego in Dominick Domasky, and you like to put other people on stages. You like to put other people first and create the spotlight for them. And then Dominick's in the background. How does that happen?
It's funny. I just had a phone call today and somebody said something like that. And I said, I prefer to be like the Dark Knight, the guy in the shadows. And it's not, so I just don't, for me, there's so many people out there with inspiring stories, so many people out there that can make a difference, so many people that have been through, climbed higher mountains, accomplished greater things. And for me, I want to feature them. I want to give them that spotlight. And if I do have this ability to help them tell their story, to help them give the voice, then I kind of feel like it's my duty to use that to help them.
Dominick, I can't help it. I'm looking on YouTube here in the background as we're live streaming and seeing quite a few little icons in the background, like Goodfellas, the movie. I can tell you like a good film. You've got boxing gloves galore. So what is this purview that we have into your life right here?
Okay, so the ethos, I'm learning about this word ethos. So what you see behind me.
That's like Karina's favorite word, by the way, ethos.
I say ethos all the time.
All the time. And masticate.
Wait,
or I'm going to chew on it.
We should play like a drinking game. If we say a word that we always say, there you go. Okay, so
we're game. These girls are game. It's Friday.
I've got a full cup of coffee, so
it is.
Whereas some people say I've got a full cup of shut the hell up. That's me being salty. Just never mind.
So the things behind me you see, what they are a little what would you call a snapshot into my life. But I was a restaurateur about 20 years ago, 15, 18 years ago, something in that timeline. And I lost $500,000. I went broke. I was in a government repayment plan, lost a house, lost a car. My life was flipped upside down. And the business at the time, a lot of these pictures hung on those walls. And for years, I didn't know what to do with these pictures, and I didn't know how to feature them in my life. They were hidden in boxes, kind of like my storytelling and kind of like the person I was. It was hidden away. And then as I started to write stories and help other people share stories, for a while, this was a studio that we used. Me and my son have a web series where we go out and interview inspiring people. So this was our studio at first, and we had those as a backdrop, and then we just keep adding more. But I wanted people to see into that life a little bit. So those are things that I'm passionate about, and we keep adding to. And you even see some behind me over one of my shoulders there is some of the books we work on when we help other people write books, some of their covers. And we keep adding to. You even see some.
Sorry.
That's a little echo.
I'm trying to be the wizard behind the scenes. So we are live. Dominick is an amazing champ. He is not only a champ, he's a motivation champ, but we are doing this live stream. So I was just trying to be the wizard behind the curtain, sharing it as we're speaking, because everybody does need to know Dominick. And the fact that you lost, did you say $500,000?
Yes.
That's brutal, first of all. And how do you come home like with your tail between your legs and tell your family, your wife, your kids, dad just couldn't make it work? Or maybe this was pre-family.
No, it was pre-children, and we were trying to have children. It's funny how the ebbs and flows of life, and even with that, I struggled. So the journey is never as glamorous as you see on some. Oh, you see pictures or a smile or this, but we all have these times where we're down, and if we keep fighting, hopefully we get through. But in that case, it was a journey where after a year or so, we were thinking, oh, we'll open second locations. This is great. And then by the end, another year later, I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the roads closed in front of my business. They were building a super center across the street, and I made a lot of mistakes back then. I was young, underfinanced, and things like that. And so you don't know going in. You go in full-fledged. Everything's always going to work. If I just work harder, it'll all work out. And I'm the son of a landscaper. My dad's 80 and still in the landscaping business.
Karina, son of a landscaper.
Well, here's the thing. Like, you're starting to draw so many parallels to my own life that it's a little eerie.
Yeah.
For one, my father's a landscape architect, and my sister married into a restaurateur's family, the Aliotos in San Francisco. And so they had this restaurant, Aliotos, I think address was like 3 Pier 29 or something like that, forever.
Wow.
Which recently shut its doors. And I mean, she has since moved on from that relationship, but he's had a restaurant that succeeded that he sold to his partner, a restaurant that completely flopped, and is now on his third restaurant. And there's even a life cycle to restaurants that succeed in some cases, where they just start to ebb and flow, and you have to work to reinvent them and really make sure that you're able to capture the hearts and minds of the local community, because you have basically a 90% failure rate for new restaurants.
Wow.
They tend to fail in their first year of opening. And some people end up pushing so much of their personal finances in it to keep it alive because they have the belief that it can succeed in the second or third year. And sometimes they're right, but often they're bankrupt. So it's just a really challenging world to break free from that kind of stereotype in. So I'm sure that you've learned a lot, and that you've learned to apply some of these things in the world that you're in now, helping publishers have success in the realm of getting their books into the world. So can you talk about that? Like, what do you do differently?
Yeah, and I'd love to. The thing back then that I wanted to, being a son of a landscaper and proud of it, and my dad taught me so much. Back then, I thought if I just work harder, it will all work out. If I just put in more hours, if I start to, I'll get a paper route. I'll stay open later on Fridays. I'll referee basketball games. You run out of hours in a day, and I still wasn't able to make it. So as I when that business closed, I got a job selling yellow page ads. And I started about 2 hours away from my home. And I was reading books like Dale Carnegie and Norman Vincent Peale and Joel Osteen and the Bible and Jeffrey Gitomer and John C. Maxwell. And so I'm studying these guys and starting to believe that I had something to say. And the thought that I had something to say was, it was different. It was about going broke. It was about getting beat up. It was about getting cut from the team. It was about not being perfect. And that's where the start of writing came. But then once I was out there and I would get on a stage or tell somebody about my book, I would start to hear their story. I'd hear the story of a woman that her father was in a concentration camp, or I'd meet somebody who overcame a disease. I'd meet somebody who ran a marathon or had given 2 legs in Afghanistan for our country. And I met those type of people that were so inspiring. And I started to think, the story I was writing, wait, and this goes back to Julie's question about being in the background. The story that I was writing, I started to feel in the stories I was telling personally, I started to think, wait a minute, they have a story. And I didn't even feel right necessarily the story being about me when there were so many, any time, any breath I was spending on me was time I wasn't sharing somebody else's story that maybe somebody else would connect with. And so that was the beginning of the business Motivation Champs. And so much of it is the sharing of inspiration, the sharing of a smile, the sharing of a nonprofit that has nothing to do, zero, with trying to make a profit or anything like that. It's if the goal is to share inspiration, positivity, and smiles 24/7, my job's to find out how to do that as much and how as often as how many ways we can. So part of that into the publishing is sometimes 120 characters or a post on social media isn't enough for somebody to share their message. So I love, like you guys doing a podcast. I love it. That's a great way for another way people consume content and a great way to share your story. Another way is publishing or screenwriting or YouTube videos. So we try to help people in all those ways share their story. And that's how we come to Motivation Champs today.
So how many books have you helped to release at this point? Or how many authors have you supported?
Over 100 authors. We're in probably somewhere over 100 books around that in that capacity.
Yeah, I think these days we see a lot of things out in media like, oh, release a book in 28 days or less and have a bestseller in your first month. And I just wonder what your thoughts
It's all
are around.
BS. It's all BS. Oh, you weren't asking me. You were asking Dominic.
I was asking Dominic because I want to have your perspective on those types of tactics because I think they work, right? They grab attention. People say, oh, I want to have a book in 28 days. I want to have a bestseller in a month. So what do you say to people if they're out there and they see these kind of things fly by in their feed and they're interested in producing a book of their own or telling their story in a new way and they're enticed by them? What would you say to them?
For me, I want to really understand why the person is writing the book. Why are you writing this? Where are you trying to go? And then we help them take the right path to get where they're going. So in this scenario that you listed, if somebody said, I have an event on day 30 and I need a book for day 30, well, then they probably should call that guy that's writing a book in 28 days. That might be the scenario where that is the perfect fit. So I like to look at all these scenarios and say, that's not what I do. And I couldn't do that. I don't do that. It's not but I understand, well, okay, if you're trying to push yourself to be a bestseller on a day in a category, well, that might get 10 likes on a post, but did it really get you to where you wanted to go? And to Julie's point, that might, on that given day, that might spark interest of 2 people or 10 people, but is there something behind that that propels your message forward? And that's I'm more into that lane. So I would really, because I can't discount that there could be somebody that doesn't ever want to write the book. Like I'm a fan of Gatsby or Red Badge of Courage or Uncle Tom's Cabin, and so or Catcher in the Rye. So I think there's a beauty and a purity in the book, and to rush it to do it these other ways, I don't necessarily agree with. But if somebody said, well, I'm going to have this guy he's going to record 10 of my stories and get this book out because I'm not a writer and I could have a story because this company was able to record it. There is some merit in that, but I would really want to understand what that person's intentions were and why they did it and have a solid conversation about that. If you're going to do something like that, what is your reason? And it better be firm.
So rhyme with reason, I guess.
Yeah. How was that for what would we call that?
I think it was diplomatic.
Right, that's what I was going for. A
Good,
diplomatic
good. You
answer
know,
to that
and we're not
question.
throwing eggs at anybody in particular. I mean, I would like to be able to write a best-selling book in 28
You
days,
are.
but I can tell you
No, you're not.
that the stories I'm working to tell, I can't get onto paper and fleshed out in that time. So
But we're
I
trying to finish a book in like 3 more days. We have a book. This
it's
is a
mostly
secret.
done.
This is a
some
secret between the 3 of us. Like, we are wrapping up our book,
Oh, and the couple of people that are watching right now.
the
but
audio
yes.
casters, and yeah, there's a deadline for sure.
and sometimes as you write a book, the story isn't over yet, or you don't know how the story will end. So
Mhm.
I recently wrote a book about Alzheimer's. My mom battles with Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
and it's been about a 10-year journey. And so when I started to write it, it was more cathartic. And then COVID hit, and I didn't know how COVID would hit and what that meant. And so it really changed that part of the book. And so you couldn't speed through this book because it didn't have the right ending yet. So
Right.
Mhm.
sometimes you might need to sit on that idea for years. I hear the Queen's Gambit that the guy spent 30 years writing
Wow.
and then it all of a sudden right place, right time, if it was the right place and the right time, that at the beginning of a pandemic, they he really he met up with Netflix before and they released this Queen's Gambit that maybe in its other form it would have never got the notoriety it got, but because right place, right time, right message, 75 million people watch it in a week or something.
Yeah, and the story's out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
And, as a publisher, so it's, there's so much to unpack in terms of publishing. There's so much to unpack in the writing process. But do you feel like when you talk to somebody or you read one chapter, you can really zero in, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Do they have the it factor? And is it worth their time to continue writing?
Yeah, I think now you asked how many people have I helped? Hundreds. And how many people have I talked to? Maybe thousands, where you have that conversation and and even for the videos and stuff we do, like I may meet somebody through social media or something and that person has it. They might not know they have it yet. They might not be ready to do. Maybe it's video now, maybe it's something else, but you can tell that person has it. And as it's my job in a way to build that and craft that and help them, because sometimes just because they have it doesn't mean they can write their story, doesn't mean that when they think they've written their story doesn't mean that they're able to deliver what they deliver. Like this, I met a gentleman one day, we're on a call like this, and man, could he tell a story. He's smoking cigarettes while we're talking, and it was like 10 in the morning. I'm like, man, this guy's cool. He's drinking a beer. He pulls over a beer and starts drinking a beer while we're talking, and I'm hanging on every word. When I saw his story, it was not as polished as it needed to be and was very short and things like that. So this person probably needs some developmental help, maybe needs a ghostwriter. He should start a podcast and share his story like that.
If
Maybe,
he's obviously a great talker, I
yeah.
mean, maybe that's the avenue for him. What do they say? If you love to talk, podcast. If you
Mhm.
love to write, blog. I mean, that's just the top tier, right? But when you get into writing a book, there's so much more, I think, to it. I think it can also be intimidating to start
Mhm.
putting the story down on paper. If you've had it in your head for a long time and you see it a certain way, maybe you lack the ability to really kind of flesh it out on the page the way you can when you speak. So in those cases, sometimes even dictating it and then taking the dictation to then
Mhm.
write out what the story is could be helpful.
I'm a huge believer in dictating into your phone, emailing it to yourself, or if you use a different app and you can dictate right into your Google Docs or your notes or something like that, and to get down the bulk of the story and then whittle it down or section it. Okay, I've been talking a lot about relationship. I've been talking a lot about overcoming adversity. Now all of a sudden, seeing it's you were able to dictate. Now I have a document, a working document. Where do I need to build? Where does it have holes? Where should I add more stories? To me, it's beautiful.
Well, and with speech to text these days, I mean, you can do it from your phone. You can actually utilize softwares. You could just record an audio file and upload that into something like Descript, and they'll just go ahead and create a Word doc for you from that file that you can then edit. So there's really no excuses not to get started trying to tell your story if you're really passionate about
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
And I want to know, what does it take to get published? What does it take for me to write a bestseller, and how do I do it? Because I know for a fact that writing the book is the easy part. Keeping it alive is the challenge.
The book is never over until you give up on it. So many people write the book and they tire after a week, after a month, after 6 months. Well, who's to say that the book wasn't going to hit in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years or something like that? So I think a lot of people give up way too soon. Then a lot of times they say, when should we start marketing the book? I haven't started writing it. What part of the book should I start? Right now, today, yesterday, you should have been marketing in it 6 months ago, starting to talk about it, build momentum for it, get other people involved. It is in a lot of ways, the book is a business card for your business. And so you have to understand, I'm writing it for this reason. Where am I going? So those are a few of the ways, but I could talk about this all day long. Being a guest on lovely shows like this, getting out of your little circle of your wife and your friends that are telling you how great things are. Meet new people, share your message new places. And the more people you can share your message with, they may ask questions that you don't know the answer to. They may ask questions that you're uncomfortable with, and you have to figure it out and still be as charming as Karina and Julie are.
Wow.
Well,
right
that's
now we're
very sweet.
charming. Right now we're charming, Karina.
Well, I like the compliment. I'll always take those.
Yes, thank
But
you.
what I will say is that I've had one experience where an author reached out to me before they'd even really commenced writing their book to come on my show, just because they wanted to work on the idea, which I think is totally great, right? In this case, he's a Stanford researcher named David Johnson. I mean, there are so many David Johnsons. You could Google that and you'd have a hard time finding him, right? But he's a professor of law and also a design thinking teacher with the D school at Stanford. So really smart guy, right? And he thinks he has a solution to actually mate or marry the concepts of design thinking with activism to create more change on a global scale using basically little cells of people or pods of people and different groups around the globe to connect via kind of the network effect and push for greater change, specifically with regard to climate activism. So it's a really interesting concept. And I think he's working on it, right? So as he's working on it, he's going on these different podcasts that are in the space and thinking about how he's going to architect the book to tell this story. I just think that's an interesting method. It's not something that I've been approached. I don't think I've ever been approached otherwise by an author that didn't actually have the book written yet.
I mean, so to you two that are finishing a book, I wonder how many of the stories that are in there that you've touched on at some point, told at some point, and then for the story, for the book, you might elaborate or go deeper in them. But a lot of what's in a book is things that you've practiced over and over. You've tested out other places.
That we've shared on this podcast, frankly.
Yeah. So to practice it and start to realize people are receiving this well. I should tell this. They're asking me for more detail. I should elaborate. So I think that is an excellent way to go about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Guest before you're finished with the book, but market the book along the way.
Oh, I think that before book launch, Dominick can correct me. I think at least 3 to 6 months before you start.
Absolutely.
Launch.
Yeah. And you have to know it's coming soon. You're talking about other things. And I would believe that author may have written the greatest book, but when you're on a podcast, when you're being a guest, to drill down and talk about, I see that right in front of me here is a book, Killing Kennedy by Bill O'Reilly. If I'm Bill O'Reilly and I'm talking just about this book, and you're not interesting to the host, you can't contribute to the conversation, is in it's their podcast. So to think that you're going to go on and steal all the momentum and talk about only your product is really a recipe for failure with authors.
And you need to have a story. And you dazzled us with your story of losing $500,000. You have to have a story that grabs people in, especially if you are an author that is going to jump on podcasts. And so many authors, though, that I've met, and I don't want to point out names or genres, but it's very difficult for them to speak about their book.
Well, they're writing for a reason. Some are introverted.
Yeah.
And they find it difficult to get on camera or in front of an audience. And so, yeah, I mean, I can see that. But it's like you have to be ready for the press of it, right? You have to be willing to put yourself on the stage a little bit and get comfortable with it, which is, I think, why we all love Clubhouse, right? Like using social audio to practice your pitch, to practice your meter, your timbre, how you speak, how you connect with people in a variety of settings. Yeah.
Do you have your authors go in Clubhouse regularly just to practice
Yeah,
their presence?
I love when they go on Clubhouse. I always encourage them, try to bring them on stage, try to, even when they're out in the world, I think it's just such a great place to meet new people, practice your message. A lot of times you're only getting 2 minutes, 1 minute, and you need to know what to do in that 1 minute where you're not showing up and throwing up, where you've just given them.
Showing up and throwing up. I love that. We need to use that. That seems to happen all the time.
Yes. So people come and I spent a lot of years in sales, and that was, you'd have this message and you'd get in front of a doctor or business owner or whoever, and so many people go blah, 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 and you lost them.
You're selling past the sale. You're not actually giving them what they want. You're not asking any questions. You don't get a feel for the room. You just kind of puke it all out there. Yeah. That's bad sales tactics right there.
And then did that bring anybody in, where you'd be better off to say, hey, I'm Dominick. This is a great room. I know you don't have much time today, so I just wanted to say hi, thank you. And maybe next time I come in the room, we can chat again. And
at least that's been a good representation of your brand. You're friendly.
At that point, they say, hey, so if in any sell at that point, well, next time, if sales is, they like you, they trust you, they buy from you. Well, this person, they didn't try to sell me anything. They are somewhat likable because they didn't waste my time. They didn't do this. And then so as you're building rapport and things like that, I think it's much more important to go about it like that.
I love that. So if you have any advice for our aspiring authors to get published, to write their bestseller, if they're self-publishing or traditionally publishing, what's that one nugget you're going to give us, Dominick? What's that one little nugget that we can encapsulate to do our best for whatever we're doing as potential authors? Give us something juicy.
Okay. For me, I think each person is so unique, and you have a story that matters. You have a story that can make a difference. So I think you have a duty to get out there by whatever means necessary and share your story. So whether that be a podcast, a clubhouse, writing a book, doing YouTube videos, if it's standing on a stump or walking down the street with a megaphone, you have that duty. So my advice is get out there by whatever means necessary and share your story.
Share your story. And that's what we're doing, right, Karina Belizzi? We're sharing Dominick's story, and it's not always pretty. It's not always polished, but that is what connects us. Our vulnerability, our ability to articulate those hard times. That's where we connect with other humans, just like this guy. And I'm going to point to him. Dominick Domasky does. He's amazing. Motivation champs. Every day I see something on social media that you post, my day is a little bit better. So we're not going to let you leave without saying 2 words.
Before
Right,
we do
Karina?
that, before
Oh,
we do the 2 words,
sorry.
I just have a question about the books that are behind you. Is there one
Oh.
that you might want to call out?
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
A particular book that you think that people should be aware of?
One, all of them, but
All of them.
I'm going to go with this one right here. This is the Red Chair Experience by a gentleman named Chris Michelle. So it's a 365 day, every entry is a different day of the year. So you can pick up and talk about, like, here, one entry is about compassion, one's about competition. And you can actually look at a glossary at the end of this book. But Chris's belief is this red chair is a red chair that was his stepdad's.
Mhm.
And then this red chair was his brother's. And his brother actually lost his life to suicide.
Oh.
And Chris now has this red chair. And when Chris sits in this red chair, it gives him peace of mind. It's his place where you can think, where he can be in the moment. And Chris says that we all have a red chair, and you can find we each need to find our own red chair experience. So for today, that's the one I'll pick up. I appreciate you guys asking.
I love that.
We'll put the links in the profile if anyone wants to get access to the red chair. Because, Dominick, you're the biggest fan of the Media Casters, we're going to ask you to just send us off with 2 words. And you can read my shirt. Well, there's 3, but the 2 last ones.
You know that is not easy to read. Come on. Kick it. So it says kick it. Let's kick it.
Yes, just kick it.
Okay, just kick it.
No, you just say kick. You just say kick it.
Kick
Not
it.
let's just kick it. Wait. No,
Kick
no,
it.
no. You have it better in you, Dom. Kick it.
Kick it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much, Dominick
I
Domasky.
appreciate you guys.
Motivation champs.
That's right. You're awesome.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Media Casters. You can keep this conversation going and kick it with Karina and Jules in live office hours each week. Visit themediacasters.mn.co to sign up. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe whenever you listen. Let's kick it.
Bye, y'all.
Why, hello again.
Bye. Hi.